It's kind of unique because it has a nicely paved, pedestrianized walkway. This is my hostel's exterior. Once would have been the hospital. It's too bad, actually, that happened. I'm glad from my viewpoint, but probably many lives were lost, not only at sea, but more importantly here, when there was no hospital for people. This is my hostel in Latacunga. Formerly it was supposed to be a hospital, but unfortunately the boat that was carrying all of the hospital equipment and supplies sunk at sea, so it never was a hospital. But it's a beautifully done building. Would have made someone who was wealthy a very lovely place to live. That's Daniela. She is in charge of this place. This is a beautiful building. This is a view out the back of the second floor. Nothing pretty about it. These are actually look like just large vacant spaces. Another church there. Honking big lock to hold this hasp, but all you need is a Phillips screwdriver. Take those screws out and you can walk in anyway. Doing a loop from my hostel, which is right behind this building on the next street. As I often do, walk around the block once so I have a full sense of it. It's interesting, that older structure there looks like it might have been part of something bigger other than this ugly cement thing to its left. Here's a pretty park. What's interesting, I think, about Ecuador's cities when you get to them is the many parks that they have. Some quite large, some just tiny, but always that classic purpose of a refuge in the chaos. Not much chaos really here. We're in a nice section of town. It gets a little more chaotic as you go from here to the bus depot where I came from. My guess is that in the early days this was an impressive building housing a government office of some sort, and they still do the same. So this park with its beautiful huge palm trees would have been a natural accoutrement to that building and to this whole square. Isn't that pretty? And standing guard while that little truck picks up the money, I guess. There's guards absolutely everywhere. I don't care where you are in the world, you can walk by a taxi driver, obviously not interested in taxis, obviously can see there's a bunch of them there, and they'll ask you if you want a taxi. Like, God, I never thought of that. Probably all early 19th, maybe even 18th century buildings. Notice even then it was a very inexpensive wood ceiling or roof with some tile on it. Of course the temperatures here are such they don't need to insulate. Like so many large beautiful buildings of their day, these archways were beautiful. Arcades on all three sides. There's that building we just walked by a few moments ago on the other side. The monument to Vicente Leon. That is no doubt the man himself. So now I'm walking the top left of the rectangle block around my hostel. And this is probably the church that we saw from the inside of the hostel on the second floor. This is called Santo Domingo. Can't find the way into the cathedral. Probably was a monastery also, and this is the cloister area. Certainly far more luxuriant than most of the cloisters we see anywhere, which they simply restored so it doesn't look ugly. One can almost empathize with the silent tranquility of this place, this space. I wonder if those are apples or what? Don't think so. I just entered what's called the Casa de los Marqueses. I think that's a female titles. Much plainer looking today than the church we were just in. Don't know the backstory on this, except that what you see white and stuccoed may well have been how this all was, and they may be in the process of restoring. So there's a sign for a museum, but apparently it isn't. It's at a farm. He said I can walk back in here, so this may be getting us deeper into the confines of the Marqueses. I hope they had some decoration back in here. It's looking rather plain throughout. This is more silent interior, nicer decorative roof than what we've seen. It's interesting to look at these places and then remember similar functional places in Asia where the remaining extant luxury is still astounding. It looks like some kind of grinding wheel. See down there those lines? That may be the remains of the original surface. Fruits and vegetables. Oh, and the meat market on the inside. Another closed area, but again, it's all the same kind of stuff. This is the meat chicken section in here. The restaurant section up here, so I may actually find something to eat up here. Put myself down here and she will get me some sopa de papa. As I've said, I speak just enough Spanish to order the wrong food, and I thought I was getting potato soup, but instead I'm getting this, which is some lettuce, lots of potato, looks like some onion, and a fried egg on top, so that's what we're having. It's a very tasty potato mix, whatever it is, plus some sausage of some kind, and some kind of hot drink. It may be a tea, I'm not sure. It's just in a metal cup, and it's just kind of warm. In the midst of the garbage architect, my attention is invariably drawn to anything that looks like it might be kind of old. This is just an interesting small building. Even in its time, I wonder what its purpose was. Old wallpaper. And look at this pretty little balcony. And then old display cases. Imperial shoe display case. How pretty that is. Street with some older buildings, reasonably painted and kept up. Of course, they always convert the bottom to shops, which they may have been all along anyway. I'm sure that this street was also part of the main central area of Latacunga SD. There are a number of these older buildings that still have a quaint feel to them. The leather shop, and they also probably work on anything to do with all of the cattle and horse tack that we would normally expect to see. And not sure what this man was cutting on the floor. There's the saddles there. It's the very high back on this saddle. Woman's saddle here. On the same block is another saddle shop and leather place. Here we see an old saddle and its tack and a pair of chaps. The very colorful kind, which we think of with Argentina and so forth. But Ecuador has its vast lands. Oh, and you can get metal or leather jackets and leather pants. I always get a kick out of looking at workbenches because they really tell a history, even though you can't know that history. Look at the dust. Imagine what's behind all that stuff that's been collecting over decades, if not more. How many hours and what kind of skill. The boxing gloves. And they're a different kind of salad. Shop and this man have been here for 50 years. Wow. I'm guessing this is today's Latacunga Central Square, if there is such a thing. Centro Comercial. Here one of the typical mountain folks for trade. selling their vegetables and other wares. There to the left is the bus terminal.